Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on investing in rural America. We'd like to turn it over to Alicia Drews, Senior Advisor for Energy for the Rural Utilities Department. Alicia.
Thanks, Maggie. Welcome, everyone, to our first of a series of stakeholder webinars where we'll be digging in to the PACE-specific details of the programs that we have released. And on Thursday, we'll be digging into the new era in detail. So we're going to hear today from Bob Coates, the branch chief of the electric program at RUS. And then we'll hear from Amanda Hope of the Innovation Center within USDA on some of the mapping resources available to all of you, and then open it up to Q&A as we have in the previous times. And as a reminder, we have a series of these types of stakeholder webinars coming up, as well as some office hours. And the office hours are designed to be explicitly about Q&A between your team and ours. So we look forward to seeing you on some of those upcoming events. And I'll turn it over to Bob.
Thanks a lot, Alicia. Welcome to this webinar. You're actually going to get a webinar from an engineer, not from a lawyer or somebody with significant energy experience, so bear with me as we run through this process. We're going to talk today, it's actually technically about PACE, which is the Powering Affordable Clean Energy, as well as eligibility for mapping and other information about mapping itself. But I actually want to run through the new era as well. And I also want to try and plug, before I even get started, a couple of the other programs that we do have within the electric program. Our infrastructure loan program is available to, obviously, to our nation's co-ops and IOUs and everybody else for regular funding for electric infrastructure. We also have a program that I run, which is a Rural Energy Savings Program, which is an energy efficiency relending program for those folks who do have energy efficiency. They offer energy efficiency services to rural areas. And also we have a very, very small program called the High Energy Cost Grant Program, which is available to rural, very rural areas where energy costs exceed 275% of the national average. But let's get started today on the two new programs that we've talked about that we have through the Inflation Reduction Act. And these are Powering Affordable Clean Energy, which is called PACE. To many of you, it's IRA Section 22001. So we'll refer to it in a couple of these different manners as we run through this program. But this whole issue with the Inflation Reduction Act is it's the largest investment that we have in rural electrification since the Rural Electrification Act was enacted in 1936. It's brand new. It's grants, loans, grant loan combinations, loan modifications, partial loan forgiveness programs, etc., to expand clean, affordable, and reliable energy across the rural sections of America. Its intent is to reduce pollution, improve health, and lower energy costs across rural America. And it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity for economic development and to enhance the quality of life in rural communities. Next slide, please, Megan. Oh, let's talk a little bit about PACE. Its program goal, as we said before, is to increase clean energy in rural America and make it significantly more affordable for consumers, especially for those in energy distressed, disadvantaged, and tribal communities, to do things like heat and cool their homes, run their businesses and farms, power their cars. We don't loan for the cars themselves, but certainly the power for it, schools and hospitals. In terms of PACE, it's partially forgivable loans for utility scale clean energy projects for wind, solar, hydropower, biomass, geothermal, and also energy storage projects that are in support of these rural renewable technologies. So let's talk about the proposed timeline of the process. Like we do for the Rural Energy Savings Program, this is going to be, both of these programs are two-stage process. It's a letter of interest and then it's an application. Okay, so we ask that you submit a letter of interest In this case, for PACE, it starts June 30th, 2023, and it runs through September 29th, 2023, about 90 days. The letters of interest, we actually have the template for the letter of interest up on the website, and Tasha will be putting up a link to that sometime during this broadcast. But they're accepted on a rolling basis and will be evaluated as received. And if the agency, we, invite you, applicants are invited to submit a full application. Next slide, please. So, who are some of the eligible applicants? For PACE, it's pretty widespread. It's corporations, states and territories, along with their subdivisions and agencies, municipalities, utility districts, nonprofits, Indian tribes, Alaska Native, regional or village corporations, LLCs, limited liability corporations, and pretty much anybody that's interested in doing something associated with affordable clean energy. There's one application for each eligible entity, and the project must produce renewable energy for resale and serve rural customers. Rural for PACE is 20,000. We have varying, as many of you know that are familiar with our programs, rurality to us can range anywhere from about 10,000 through our water program to 50,000 through the Rural Energy Savings Program and the REAP program. But in this case, it's 20,000. And the area must be predominantly rural. So eligible activities, we talked about this before, but includes renewable power generation from wind, solar, geothermal, hydropower, or biomass, and then storage. We do have 3 forgiveness levels under PACE. Category 1, which is the minimal requirement. If you meet those minimum requirements, you're available for up to 20% of the total loan forgiveness for this particular loan program. Category 2, which is up to 40%, includes population that is served by energy communities or distressed or disadvantaged communities. And the third category, which is up to 60% total loan forgiveness, if the proposed service area is in Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, and other territories along the Pacific Rim, Compact of Free Association of States. Or the second one is the proposed service area that consists of 60% or more tribal areas and areas that serve substantially underserved trust areas, SUDAs, as many of us call it. And the third portion is if the project is owned by an Indian tribe, which is defined by the federally recognized Indian tribe list of 1994, their wholly owned subsidiaries and instrumentalities, or the Alaska Native corporations, including all the other corporations. Next slide, please. Oh, and I did want to bring up a point that the agency can offer an applicant a financial package that is different from that requested. The forgiveness portion can be adjusted slightly, as well as the actual total loan amount as well. So let's talk a little bit about the program timelines. On May 16th, 2023, we published the PACE NOFO. We also published the New Era NOFO at that same date. Between then and June 10th, a couple days from now, we are in the process of hosting webinars, speaking at conferences. Mr. McLean is currently in Minneapolis right now speaking at a conference. And certainly we're also available to speak and answer any questions, which are in the process of doing through our FAQs. On June 30th of this month, then is the opening date for submission of PACE letters of interest. Letters will be reviewed on a rolling basis. In July, we will begin these reviews and begin invitations for applications. If you are invited, you will have 60 days to submit an application, unless we agree to something otherwise. On September 29th is the closing date for the submission for PACE letters of interest. And somewhere between September 1st of 2023 and December of 2025, PACE awards and announcements will be made. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the new era. As I say, I know that that's not part of this presentation necessarily, but I still wanted to run through it quickly for those that are not familiar with it. But it's 9.7 billion in budget authority for the long-term resiliency, reliability, and affordability for rural areas to achieve the greatest reduction in greenhouse gases, CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide emissions. Eligibility for this program is quite a bit more limited to electric co-ops, cooperatives that are or have been RUS or REA, the Rural Electrification Act, borrowers, cooperative entities, predominantly in rural areas, or wholly or jointly owned subsidiaries of these co-ops. The activities supported for New Era include the purchase of new energy, renewable energy systems, zero emission systems, carbon capture and storage systems, and then deployment of these systems, and also energy efficiency improvements to generation and transmission systems of eligible entities, or a combination of the above. The permitted use of the funds are grants, something new to us within the electric program, except for the high energy cost grant program. But we can provide grants up to a maximum of 25% of the projects. Loans can be fixed at 2% or at treasury rate, which is the federal government's cost of capital, predominantly, or 0% for prominently distressed, disadvantaged, and energy communities. We can refinance debt for stranded assets in certain circumstances, and in any combination of the above. There's an awful lot that we're trying to provide as much latitude as we can for these particular programs, subject to the statutory requirements. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some of the program details for New Era. Eligible entities we just talked about, electric co-ops. The eligible uses we talked about. The process is also in 2 stages. The letter of interest. You can submit an electronic submission of the letter of interest open from July 31st of 2023 through August 31 of 2023. That's only 30 days. It's not a long time, but you've got time to sit and think about it and prepare for that submission. The letter of interest must meet the minimum requirements, and it will be scored according to the selection criteria that's on another page here. We do have additional requirements, which are reliability, resiliency, and affordability. So focus on that when it comes to your letter of interest. If you are scored highly, you will receive an invitation to proceed with the full application. High scoring applicants will be invited to submit that full application. The full proposal must be submitted within 60 days of the invitation to proceed or a mutually agreeable date. And RUS does reserve the right to negotiate a final package of assistance. Okay. Allowable funding requests. Applicants can propose assistance from any single product or a combination of the following. Loans to finance the cost of new clean energy projects at treasury rates or interest rates as low as 0%. I can't see my full screen, so I'm trying to figure out the right side. Grant funding up to 25% of the total cost of the proposal. Refinancing of stranded assets as low as 0% with reinvestment in eligible clean activities. Loans with interest rates as low as 0% for projects serving predominantly disadvantaged and distressed communities. And similar to what's in PACE, the agency can offer an applicant a final package that is slightly different from that requested. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk a little bit about PACE letters of interest. This is a new slide. These next 2 slides are new. If you've been through this before and haven't had a chance to see this one. The LOIs must be submitted to RUS electronically beginning June 30th, 2023. This is again for PACE at 11:59 Eastern, and must be submitted no later than September 29th, 2023, at 11:59 a.m. Eastern Time. A sample LOI is available. Josh is putting it up on the website, or going to give the link on it, to organize those submissions and attest to provisions of the PACE NOFA. And it will include, each element will be required, as in section D2 of the PACE NOFO. The applicant's confirmed intention to seek a PACE loan. That's something we typically do within the electric program, is we require some attestation that you intend to seek a PACE loan. And then the applicant's good faith commitment to meet all the program conditions and requirements of the NOFA. There's a lot more to it in that this template's about 3 pages long, but it's some of us have heard that folks are very interested in finding out more about this letter of interest. So we published this thing actually today. It's been published, and so take advantage of it. Look at it. It's on the website, and please submit any questions that you might have based on what you see. The applicant's LOI should provide sufficient information for RUS to determine that the applicant meets all program eligibility requirements. Next slide, please. So, applicants should exercise due care to ensure that all the required information provided would include the submitter's profile, the certain certification of authority to submit the LOI. We just talked about that. Point of contact information. We absolutely need to know how to get back in touch with you. Requested financial reporting. A technical description of the project, no more than about 1,500 words, please. The location of the project, including a shape file, which Amanda will talk about in a minute, and those communities that are actually served by the project. We need all of this information to be able to evaluate the application, or the letter of interest, and determine whether you are eligible for an application. Next slide, please. Now, we're going to turn it over to Amanda to talk a little bit about mapping. Amanda, take it away.
Great, thank you, Bob. The mapping tool link above, it provides some general information related to distress, disadvantage, or energy community locations. The energy community locations will be added in the future. They're currently being developed by the Department of Energy, and we'll be using that information. The mapping tool link above shows distressed and disadvantaged communities. In PACE, in the new era, types of financial assistance available will be based on the characteristics of the communities served by the applicant's proposed projects. Applicants will indicate whether the project serves such communities, and the agency will validate the characteristics of the proposed service areas, both at the LOI and at the full application stages. So what I'm going to show you right now and demonstrate is just the generalized tool to understand if your project's located in either a distressed or disadvantaged community. I'm going to share my screen and do a live demo here. Okay. All right, I have my screen shared and I have the map pulled up. This is the locations of the distressed and disadvantaged communities. And right now we have the instructions on your left-hand side here. It just shows you where you type in your address of the project. You can type it in up here. And it shows, it provides information on how to locate if your community is in distressed or disadvantaged. On the right-hand side, we have a layers list where you can turn on and off layers, and the legend. We have the distressed community index, both for Puerto Rico and continental United States. We have the disadvantaged communities, the disadvantaged community Alaska Native villages, and disadvantaged communities federally recognized tribes. All three of these, although different colors, are disadvantaged communities. We also have some information over here on the definition of distressed, disadvantaged, or the energy communities. And again, the energy communities will be added. The Department of Energy is currently developing those that data, and we will be incorporating it into this lookup tool. use this tool, you can you can put your address in here, which is the preferred way, or you can scroll in and out if you have a generalized area using your scroll button or these plus or minus. Now, just to demonstrate, I'm going to add in an address here, and I'm just going to hit go. You can see by the color code, I'll just zoom out a little bit to give some more context, that this community is both in a distressed and disadvantaged. And if I want to see a little bit more, a little clearer, I can turn layers on and off. Again, this tool provides a generalized context to see if the project area is either within a distressed or disadvantaged. Okay, back to you, Bob.
Great, thanks, Amanda. One thing I did want to, I know I forgot before, was to talk to you a little bit about underpace. The loan size eligibility is somewhere between 1 million on the low side and 100 million on the upper side. The budget authority for PACE is 1 billion, wherein the budget authority for the New Era program is 9.7 billion, just to give you a flavor for how big these programs are. I also wanted to provide a slide here for key resources. To me, this looks like a dartboard, but these are little URLs, so feel free to click on these. The slide deck is also available on the website, so feel free to run to the website, pull this information off. You can also search actually on the website itself for a lot of this information as well. Next slide, please. And this is also contact information using the same form for frequently asked questions, as well as our general field representative link, which takes you to a map of the United States. Click on your state, and you can find out who the general field representatives are for your particular area. If you've got any additional questions, please send them to the link at the very bottom. Some of you have used the rd.rus.ira questions. That does not get to us. You have to add SM, which is the shared link, or in other words, use the full link before you submit those questions. Okay, that is the end of our presentation at this point, and we would like to answer some questions for you. Eliza and I are going to be running that. Do you want me to go ahead and do that, Eliza?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me take a whack at it. All right, to start out, John Buffington asked the question. It's a long one. How will you make a determination on the level of forgiveness if the service area is partially energy community or distressed disadvantage, but not necessarily clearly less than 50% or greater than 50%? And that's true. Rurality is a 50% test. Eyeball test, something more methodological, like the use of census tract data. And if the latter, what if the service territory bisects census tracts? This is a great question, which we do not have, we don't have an answer for right now. This is one I'd kind of like to take back to the committee, which we do on many of these, and provide you with an answer to. The short answer is we're gonna do what we can to provide the best determination that we can based on the information we get from you. Eliza, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think we had talked about, I think, echoing that we'll get back to you with the formal answer, but we had talked about, you, the applicant, provide us your argument for why you think it should be various percentages, and roughly speaking, what the ratio of different communities are is the general approach. But you let us know, and then as Bob said, we'll review that and make a determination. But we'll put that in our formal FAQ list to send back something more formal.
Right. Good. Thank you. Okay. Anonymous attendee asked, Will there be scoring criteria where a disadvantaged community scores higher than a distressed community?
I could take that. So we're not going to score different communities against each other in that way. There are 3 different tiers that all applications will go into. So there is that tier 2, where you could get up to 40% loan forgiveness if 50% or more of the population is located within an energy community, distressed or disadvantaged. So all applications that reach those underserved communities will be in a tier that has a minimum of 300 million allocated towards it. And then we have some additional funding that could be added, but that's the minimum that each of those tiers will be provided.
Okay, next question, same person. Is there a shape file available for download with the distressed disadvantaged communities data? Amanda, you might have an answer to that.
Yes, I can provide that information. It's not available to download directly off the mapping tool at this point, but that can be an option. The disadvantaged is publicly available data that you can download, but I can make available easier. But it's through the Climate and Environmental Justice website. And then the disadvantaged is specific to rural development, so I can make that available as either a feature service or a shape file.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Duff Mitchell out in Juneau, Alaska. Hello, Duff. Haven't talked to you in a while. What are the specific loan costs unique to the PACE loan? Application fee if invited. There are no loan costs for application fees anyway to the PACE program. Let's see, loan costs and fees, continuing loan insurance or other loan service fees over the term of the loan. I do not believe we offer require those. Is there a one-pager sheet for all anticipated fees and costs? We will respond to that in the Q&A, but I don't know that we're going to have a need for the one-pager. But Duff, we will respond to that in the Q&A, so look for that in the next week or so.
Bob, is that something that our core electricity program has some template on in terms of what are typical expenses that projects include?
It's in the, it would be in the section 317 of the of our Act. But we do not, different from REAP and some of the other programs, we actually do not charge a fee for applications within the electric program. So, and I understand that others they are interested in other loan programs or grant programs within the rural development, and there are some charges for some of those. But within the electric program, we do not have a requirement for that.
Right. So there's no fee for applying, but in terms of costs for developing the project that you could include within what you're asking for compensation.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Look to our electricity program for what types of engineering and project costs are typical.
Yeah, and I think we've answered a few of those questions. So you might find some in the Q&A, but we'll try to develop some additional ones if we haven't included all of those. That's great. Great suggestion, Duff. Great suggestion, Elisa. Anonymous attendee is back. For awardees, does the interest start to accrue once the project receives the disbursement? Typically, that is the case. I'll give you an example of RESP, since we really haven't done one under IRA, but under the Rural Energy Savings Program, if you request in advance, which is what we call a draw, whatever you want to call it, you would get one, and then you would receive an invoice from our St. Louis office, which handles our billing. And on the initial information, it actually tells you what your amortization is, how long you got to pay it, et cetera, et cetera. For RESP, it's 10 years, and it's 0% interest. So they basically take what the advance request was, divide it by 120 months with 30 days to pay the first time, And that is how much you're going to be paying for the next 10 years to pay back that particular advance. We anticipate similar situation for these types of loans. Megan Sanger, can REAP grant funds be used on the same project as New Era or PACE? Eliza, you want to take that one?
Sure, they cannot. You can select between REAP, New Era, or PACE. So you could apply, but you couldn't accept an award to both of those programs between REAP or PACE or New Era. So just one, but REAP, just to generally lay out some of the differences, has a lower price range in terms of the cost of the project. So if you're under $1 million, definitely look at REAP. If you're over $1 million, take a closer look at New Era. At PACE, sorry, at PACE.
Right. Liren Dalby, does battery storage and ocean thermal energy conversion qualify? Battery storage does, as long as there's for PACE, as long as there is a renewable energy source included with that. So in other words, battery storage, if it's for a fossil fuel unit, would not qualify, but if it is but it would for a renewable. Ocean thermal energy conversion, that's a great
Ocean
question.
waves. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking here at the definition under the RE Act, and it says ocean waves is B in terms of defining renewable energy. So broadly speaking, it might, but I don't know the specifics of that technology. So if it is a commercially available form of ocean waves, then it would be.
Or even, well, thermal energy to me, I'm the engineer, is in essence the equivalent of a thermocline or something along in that line. So we need to check on that and put that one in the Q&A. Great question, though.
Yeah.
Eric Horn, thank you. Hey, we appreciate that. Just to clarify, are you saying that my feedstock industrial waste streams containing significant fibers, plastics, specialty waste, tires, MSW are eligible as long as it is a biomass? It's eligible. Industrial waste streams containing those fibers, plastics, specialty waste would not be. Correct, Eliza?
Yes, and generating electricity, not gas, as to the same as the last, or heat.
Right.
Yep.
Good catch.
Same as before.
Michael George, you just moved on me. Can a PACE loan be used in addition to utility make-ready funds on a single project? You got to help me with the question. I know what make-ready is because I used to work for a utility. That is where, and assuming that you are the utility, you are getting funds from somebody like a cable company that is trying to attach to a pole, and those costs that you need to do to meet the National Electric Safety Code and other codes is what make-ready costs are, at least in my opinion. That's another question that we've not had before, so I got to take that one back as well. Yeah, it'd be better if you could send us a little bit more detail about that question, because I'd kind of be interested in seeing what the situation is, where you need the make ready for a PACE loan, in addition to a PACE loan. So yeah, if you could send that in, I certainly appreciate it. Next one, anonymous attendee. To apply for any grant or loan, does the owner have to do it, or can we do it for them with the necessary information? Is this on the application piece, or is this the actual project itself?
I think in both cases, would you say the answer is you could certainly draft it, but they have to be the ones to formally review it and submit it.
Right. Yep, you're absolutely right. how or where do we go to apply for a grant or loan? That will be on, you'll go to the website and there will be a link to a portal starting on June 30th. So you would go to that portal and it will guide you through the application process. Anonymous is back. Can new era funding be applied to power purchase agreements with third-party developers? Eliza, yes.
Yeah, we have a lot of PPA questions and we're working on a fairly robust set of FAQs specific to PPAs that we expect to be up maybe end of this week or early next week. So definitely come back and check our FAQs on PPAs. Generally PPAs are oh, sorry, that's a new era. Can new era funding be applied to PPAs with third party? So for new era questions, come back on Thursday. Today, we're going to be focusing on PACE questions.
All right. Can you explain how loan forgiveness will work in practice? If eligible for 20%, do you effectively waive 20% of the loan at issuance? Lost it. Or is it forgiven at a later point? Does the forgiveness impact amortization of the loan? Trying to get a sense of how one would model loan forgiveness. It's a great question. You want to handle that one? You want me to?
Oof. I think you should.
Okay. You get the forgiveness back. Well, first of all, the question is, well, and these would not be system loans. It would be a project loan. So from our US perspective, if you have a project loan, you actually don't get paid back. You don't get that funding until the project is complete and operational. Okay, and that has to be done before September 30th of 2031. So you would need to have interim financing in advance of that. Okay, so if the project is complete and operational at that date, then you would be eligible to receive your funding. Okay, if you've met all of the requirements that are in the loan, then you would be eligible for that 20% at that point.
And in terms of how you put it on your balance sheet, I believe what we talked about is that it depends on your particular entity's accounting. So that's something you would need to talk with your financial advisors on. Is that correct, Bob? Yeah.
Yes.
We're getting that question a lot, but yeah.
We do get it a lot, and it comes in varying forms. And realize that there's the whole tax issue is also in play. And frankly, we have no advice at this point related to that tax issue because it's Treasury that's going to provide that information, and they have not, to my knowledge, have not published it yet.
Very soon, very, very soon, we're told. Yes.
So Srikanth Matala, I hope I didn't butcher your name, I apologize. Can an applicant still apply for both REAP grant and PACE loan, although both cannot be secured by the same applicant to be on the safe side?
Yes, you can apply, but you cannot sign for both.
Right. Jake McCordle, for eligibility, if you are a newly formed cooperative in the USVI and Puerto Rico, can you still apply? You can apply for PACE, yes. For New Era, contact us. Okay, Tasha's bouncing me around a little bit. She's responding so fast. She's getting through this one quickly. Eric, the feedstock I have, industrial waste streams containing generates electricity when processed. So in that case, would this feedstock be eligible? It has to be biomass by definition. And I don't know the specific definition of biomass, but if you've got put that one in as a specific question. We can respond back to you. Anonymous attendee, can a PACE application be contingent on a subsequent execution of a power purchase agreement? The answer to that would be yes, it can be. But with PACE, you want to submit, because it is for resale, you want to submit whatever you have with the letter of interest about the power purchase agreement. Even if you don't have one, if you can provide us with information about who the off-taker would be, and that you've had a discussion with that off-taker, the more information you have, the better off it is for both you and us in terms of the application that you would submit, or the letter of interest that you would submit, and also our ability to review that and to make a determination for eligibility.
Right. I think the key, just to reiterate what Bob said, the key is we want to see that there's a bankable buyer. And so if you can illustrate that there is that, like, either you have who it is and you just need to still negotiate the details, but just helping to make the case that you do have a buyer, or that it is likely to emerge, will strengthen the case.
Absolutely. I mean, we realize that you're not necessarily going to have the land under contract, the environmental review done, and these power purchase agreements all complete at the LOI stage. So provide us with as much information as you currently have based on the time that you've submitted it, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one from Anonymous.
Sounds like Ken wants to add to that.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, at the LOI stage, we can understand why a PPA may not be in the final form or executed form. And, but we will definitely never release funds until that PPA is executed. And we may or may not consider obligation with that PPA until the PPA is executed. That might be something we might consider, but we would never release funds until it's executed.
Right.
Okay.
That's been a subject of much discussion in-house. So we're working very hard to provide a response that should be valuable for those interested in this. Okay, please elaborate on 25% injection options, since the NOFA alludes to no other loans. I'm a little confused on that. Will tax credits anticipated from a bridge loan be acceptable? Other options allowed or disallowed? I'm a little confused on that question.
Me too. Maybe if you could rewrite that grammatically, just a little hard to follow.
Yeah, chop it up into
Hopefully.
pieces for us. We're just simple people here. And if not, if you could, if you've got a specific situation, can you put that one, send that one to the questions email box? That would be helpful. Regarding energy storage, what does in support of renewable technologies mean? Is there a specific criteria for energy storage projects to demonstrate support? Ken, you want that one, or you want me to take it? Since you're here.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the question. Is it under open?
Regarding energy storage, what does in support of renewable technologies mean? Is there specific criteria for energy storage projects to demonstrate support?
Well,
and what I had said earlier was,
mhm.
For PACE, that the storage was allowable as long as it supported a renewable energy project.
Right. Now, the obvious connection would be, no pun intended, is if it was interconnected. So obviously that battery storage would, if it was charged by the renewable, that's a direct connection. And obviously in support of that storage facility would be in support of the renewable. We will finance battery that stands alone if it can be shown that it helps, that it is partially or regenerized by other renewable systems in the system. But also if it's used to provide reliability for when those, like if it's used to provide power when later on in the day when the solar isn't providing energy into the system. And, if you can show that relationship, we can certainly finance a standalone battery storage system in that particular instances. So you have to show the kind of way it's supporting other renewables, even if it's not being funded directly as part of the project.
Thanks,
Does that make
Ken.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dylan, can these funds be used, and I'm assuming it's for PACE, be used for solar rural municipalities wastewater treatment plants? We'll probably have to take that one back. The PACE is renewables that require resale. And so we need to take that one back. That's a great question. Wesley, is it Simek? How would long-term renewable PPAs be treated? And how would we calculate the present value of the contract? Would the imputed debt be eligible? Ken? Do we want to take that one, or we want to take that one back?
Yeah, I think those questions are all answered in the PPA FAQ that we have being finalized this week. So we will get back to you on those. Check the FAQs by Friday, I would say.
Yeah, you're one of many that has asked this type of question. So there's great interest in it, and we want to make sure that we get this right.
And just to add to the storage question, I think something basic like this renewable energy, the associated renewable energy system could provide X kilowatt hours without this storage project. And with the storage project, you could do X plus Y kilowatt hours. That demonstrates that you're increasing the capacity of the renewable energy asset. So something as simple as that, I think would work.
Okay, Elliot Stewart. Is it one project per legal entity that can submit an LOI into PACE, or can a legal entity submit for more than one project per LOI? Good question. You can submit for more than one project, as long as it's one legal entity.
And now how you define one project in your LOI can be very broad. So each legal entity can apply for only one LOI, but within your LOI, you can include many, many different facilities that are stretched across different states.
Yeah, Duff, you have a similar question. Can an applicant file a LOI for more than one category of PACE, but only accept one LOI acceptance? In essence, it's the same situation. You submit one LOI, but it can be for multiple projects, as long as they're all eligible projects under the PACE program. Anonymous is back. You mentioned that storage could be included, if not with a fossil fuel resource. What about a standalone battery storage system that charges from the grid? In PACE, it has to be tied to a renewable activity for storage to be acceptable. Okay. And Duff, if a project is more than 100 million, can an applicant stack a PACE loan with another USDA loan program for the balance of the required financing? Yes. Provided that the project is acceptable on both under PACE and under the loan program. So in other words, if it's a solar project that's well over $100 million, solar and storage, whatever, then yes, PACE could cover the first 100, and then the loan program could, the infrastructure loan program or whatever, could also chip in for the remaining financing.
As long as those other loan programs are not New Era or REAP.
Yeah, right. Okay. Christos, I don't even want to say that last name. That's one I can't say. What are the minimum requirements that an invited project may have attained in order to have its loan application approved? You know, there's land control, et cetera. For the latter, is a letter of intention between the developer and the offtake adequate to qualify at the time of application submission? Ken, this is right down your alley.
I would say that we'll be lenient regarding the LOI and the letter and the application. But please realize that during our due diligence, we have to be sufficiently satisfied with the technical review and the underwriting of the project before we would obligate. So there would have to be some movement and better solidification of where the project is going to be built, and the agreements have to be not so much fully executed, but maybe drafted up into a certain form for us to find it acceptable to obligate. But again, everything has to be completed before we'd ever release funds.
So for those of you
Certain
who may not
agreements would
know,
have to be placed, and obviously, we can't finance anything until the environmental is completed. So we will take under consideration delaying. We might obligate, but even though the environmental is still in process, but understand that funds cannot be released until the project is fully received all environmental requirements and has satisfied our U.S. environmental staff NEPA requirements before we do so.
so Ken is the branch chief for the technical review committee for the loans.
Yep.
For those of you who are not familiar with him, really, really smart guy. Matthew Simon, would a FERC-related entity fall under both FERC and RUS as regulators if the entity was successful in an RUS application under New Era, PACE, or a combination of these programs? Ken?
Well, we're not a regulator.
Right.
So just put that out there. We don't regulate. We only provide loan funds. So whether or not you're FERC related doesn't matter to us. What it means, as long as it meets the eligibility requirements under PACE, that's all that's important to us.
Might as well take the next one too, Ken. What are the NEPA requirements for PACE?
It depends upon the type of project, the size of the project, where it's built. You have to meet 7 CFR 1970 requirements. So I would urge you to look at 7 CFR Part 1970 to look at the requirements of what is CADX, what is an EA, and what is an EIS requirements.
And I'll add to that, one of the elements of a NEPA review is the Farmland Policy Protection Act, and that is to identify if significant land, prime farmland, is being impacted, and if so, it requires the agency to consider alternative sites. So just wanted to flag that as something that's important to USDA. As much as you all can take the lead in proactively identifying locations that are of least conflict area, places that are not impacting prime agricultural and locally significant land, that will make everything go much more smoothly. So encourage you to look into those opportunities, and we'll be sharing some more information about that as over the next couple of months.
Okay, we're just about out of time and almost, well, we got another question. Okay, good. We got a little bit more time for it. Dan Stevenson, understood application platform will not be available until June 30th. That is correct. There is a webinar scheduled for 6/29 entitled Demo, How to Submit USDA PACE Letters of Interest. Will that webinar show via screen share how the submission tool works? We hope so. The platform is actually currently being developed, and we've seen some demonstrations of them already, but there's still a lot more to do. So the goal is to have it completely available and running by that 6/29 date so that we can demonstrate that. Good question. Do PACE and New Era both cover high voltage line extension and transformer costs to supply a solar farm? Dan?
Yes, it does. If it's needed to export and transmit the power from the facility to wherever it's being utilized, the power is being consumed, yes, that is part of the cost that can be financed.
Okay. Then
As long
Duff
as,
has,
and just adding to that, as long as the solar farm that you're mentioning there is a new facility, or if it's an existing facility that can then increase its capacity through those transmission investments.
right. Yeah, good point. Duff, does a completed EIS for the project from other federal agencies suffice for PACE? Understandably, USDA would review. Yes, we would, and can.
Yes, that we would, but they would still have to be adopted by our agency, so they would need to look at it. The RUS environmental team would still need to look at it and consider its adoption.
The LOI indicates demonstrate how you will pass on a portion of the savings as part of the community benefit. What amount would be expected here? Assuming that's the amount of information provided, not necessarily the amount of money, or maybe it is, I don't know.
I think that's what, yeah. Either way, we don't have a specific amount. That is part of what the competitive process will be, you know, to see what various folks are providing. So we don't have a specific number. If you find some best practices out there in terms of how other projects have shared the economic benefits with community members, both in terms of bill impact as well as if there's any kind of licensing royalty type fee, those are both really welcome types of community benefits.